What's up, guys? D-Rock 1992 here. For this next video and for my next Bond actor in my About series, I'm going to be talking about the guy who played James Bond in 4 Bond films, Pierce Brosnan. He is a really good Bond. He is, I think, there are really similar comparisons to Sean Connery. Pierce Brosnan is as masculine and macho and a man's man, much like Sean Connery was. They really are very similar. Without further ado, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to jump between film and television a little bit. Starting with film, his debut in 1979. It was a television film called Murphy's Stroke. So all the way back in 1979. And throughout the years, he starred in some movies. A movie called The Fourth Protocol, which I've heard of. He starred in 1987. A television miniseries in 1989 called Around the World in 80 Days. But really, Around the World in 80 Days after the Jules Verne, I believe, was a book by Jules Verne. Excuse me. And then I'm going to jump into television here with his most memorable television role as Remington Steele in the TV series Remington Steele. He starred in this TV series from 1982 to 1987, and he was a detective in this series. He starred alongside Stephanie Zimbalist. And, Remington Steele went for 5 seasons and 94 episodes. What is also significant about Remington Steele is that in 86, 85, one of those years, or something like that, but he almost was going to be James Bond earlier than what he was. He was selected as James Bond. They were ready to put him in. He was ready to be a James Bond, to portray James Bond earlier. Unfortunately, he had contract obligations with Remington Steele, so he was not able to play James Bond when he did, because he was still under contract for Remington Steele. That really disappointed him as well. He has said in interviews that it really disappointed him that he wasn't able to do it. But he sucked it up. He finished up Remington Steele in 1987. And there you go. He was done after that. Before James Bond, one of the most famous films he was in, it was a supporting role, but it was the Robin Williams film Mrs. Doubtfire. He played the boyfriend of Robin Williams' character's wife that he's very jealous of. Because obviously that he's very jealous of him. They divorced. Robin Williams and Sally Field, their characters divorced. Pierce Brosnan comes into the picture. You can see why Robin Williams would be jealous, because Pierce Brosnan is a very good-looking man. That's for sure. But yeah, it was a small role. It was a supporting role, but a memorable role in Mrs. Doubtfire. And then, a couple years later, he finally got to portray James Bond. No contract obligations at all with any other shows. Now he was able to portray James Bond. And he started off portraying James Bond in my favorite Bond film of all time, 1995's GoldenEye. It is a great movie, and the big reason I like it is because I played the video game when I was little. You know, when I was when I was a teenager, early teenage years, 12, 13, when I first got it, that game is just so memorable to me. So memorable. I had so many good times playing it, the GoldenEye game, it holds great memories for me. And I'm so nostalgic about it. I've actually thought about getting it again, getting a Nintendo 64 so I can play the game again. I used to have a Nintendo 64, but I sold it a long time ago. I don't understand why, but I did. But yeah, the movie GoldenEye was very good as well. It followed the video game very well. The video game followed the movie very well. There are a couple things that the video game had that the movie didn't, but you can find that. You find that video game the video game can't truly follow the movie exactly as the movie was, Sean Bean is Alec Trevelyan. Very memorable role. A very good Bond villain. One of the best. And Janssen, or something like that, as Xenia Onatopp. A double entendre name right there, definitely. Like in Goldfinger, Pussy Galore. That's a double entendre. But Xenia Onatopp and GoldenEye, whew, hot. Very hot. And that Famke Janssen is played in the X-Men series. No, not X-Men. The Taken series. She's been in the Taken series. Maybe X-Men, though. I don't know if she has ever been in X-Men. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. GoldenEye, it's my favorite Bond movie of all time. It's a movie I can watch over and over again. It's really great. 1997. I find this interesting. He starred as Robinson Crusoe in the movie Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe was a novel way back in the day. Robinson Crusoe's about this guy who gets stranded on an island and has to try to, he has to live on the island, basically. He has to try to survive. And Robinson Crusoe, played by Pierce Brosnan. I bet a lot of people enjoyed that, because Pierce Brosnan is a good-looking man. But yeah, I find that interesting. Then in 1997, he also portrayed Bond in the second time in the movie Tomorrow Never Dies, which is my second favorite Brosnan movie. Tomorrow Never Dies, another great Bond film. Underrated. I think it's very underrated. But it's very good at the same time. The actor Jonathan Pryce plays the villain. His name's Elliot Carver. And it's just a memorable Bond film. And then in 1997, he plays in the movie Dante's Peak, which is about a volcano, I believe. Pierce Brosnan in the movie, and Linda Hamilton from the Terminator movies. It's a movie about volcanoes, basically, and I think Brosnan and Hamilton are scientists or something like that. I have watched part of it before, but it was years ago. 1999, he portrays Bond for the third time in The World Is Not Enough. A good Bond film, definitely. A good Bond film, one I could watch over and over. I could watch every Bond movie over and over again, as I've said before. The World Is Not Enough is a good Bond film. And what's significant about it, in a way, is that Denise Richards plays the Bond girl. Denise Richards from Denise Richards from what's the movie? Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the movie that she was in that is so memorable. Wild Things. Wild Things is a memorable Bond movie, or a memorable Denise Richards movie, because she's so hot in the movie, for one thing. And I will kind of spoil it. There is a good love scene between Denise Richards and Neve Campbell in that movie. Very good love scene in a pool. But anyway, I'm not going to get off topic. World Is Not Enough is a... it's a very... Denise Richards got a lot of criticism as the Bond girl in The World Is Not Enough. She did get a lot of criticism. I thought she didn't do too bad. I thought she was alright, Not the best Bond girl, but I thought she was alright. But The World Is Not Enough is also a good Bond film. 1999 also... he stars in a movie called The Thomas Crown Affair. This is significant because it's a remake of a movie that was made in 1968, and it is a heist film. It stars Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo. 2001, he stars in the movie that I've heard of, The Tailor of Panama. It's a movie I've just heard of before. And then in 2002, he plays James Bond for the final time in Die Another Day. Die Another Day is good, Die Another Day faced a little bit of criticism for, I think, a lot of CGI effects. There was a lot of technology in this movie. CGI, computer-generated imagery. And people did criticize it for it. Criticize that. I didn't think it was that bad. And Die Another Day is significant because, well, one thing, Halle Berry is the Bond girl, Jinx. The other thing is, it was the 40th anniversary of Bond at the time. Dr. No started in 1962. Die Another Day was in 2002. So the 40th anniversary, which was very memorable. And another one, right now, before I forget, in all the Bond movies, in all the Pierce Brosnan movies, you have Judi Dench playing M, the leader of James Bond, the James Bond's boss. And it's significant. Judi Dench's casting was significant because she's a woman and she holds a high position of power. Back in the day before Judi Dench, there was it was all men who played M. Bernard Lee, and there's this other guy who played M for a couple movies. I forget his name, but there were three men that played M at the time, before 1995's GoldenEye. Then Judi Dench came in. She's female, and she plays M, which is definitely very good. Woman power, girl power, right there. I'm glad about that. Happy about it. There's a name who I'm going to mention as well, Rosamund Pike, who plays a bad Bond girl, Miranda Frost, in Die Another Day. And what's significant about her is that Rosamund Pike is up for an Academy Award for Best Actress this year for the movie Gone Girl. The movie that had Ben Affleck and directed by David Fincher, I believe. But yeah, a couple things that are significant about that Die Another Day movie. Just a couple things I wanted to mention. I think Die Another Day is a good Bond film, definitely. In that, Bond was over 50 years old. Pierce Brosnan was over 50 years old. So, and there was some rumors that he would come back for a fifth Bond film. But he was getting pretty old for Bond at the time. He was in his 50s when he was in Die Another Day. So eventually he decided he was getting too old for Bond, and he retired from the role. Now, after James Bond, he starred in a movie called Seraphim Falls in 2006, which I have heard of, with Liam Neeson. So a good little casting there. And then there is one that people, I bet, would never expect him to be in. The musical Mamma Mia in 2008. A musical! James Bond in a musical. Wow. Never expected that. That probably came out of left field there to a lot of fans of Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. Mamma Mia got mixed reviews from the film critics, so it didn't do extremely well with critics, but I think did okay at the box office. It did pretty good there. Oh, it did very good. Over $600 million on a $52 million budget. So coming up, he was in a movie called The Ghost Rider in 2010. Another one I've heard of. Bag of Bones in 2011. Yet another one I've heard of. The World's End in 2013, which is a movie it's a Simon Pegg and Nick Frost comedy. And then this year, one of the big ones that he was in this year was The November Man. Actually, this was a movie I wanted to see in the theaters. It looked interesting. It was, it looked very interesting, and I was looking forward to it. I didn't get to see it in the theaters, but, yeah, Pierce Brosnan, this is a spy action thriller. I think it was, I think it drew comparisons to James Bond. In this movie, he is a spy. Pierce Brosnan is a spy, and James Bond obviously is a spy. Another woman in the movie is Olga Kurylenko. And in a later Bond movie, she was a Bond girl, but in a later Bond movie. November Man actually didn't do very well. 35% on Rotten Tomatoes. And box office wise, it really didn't do a great job. On a $15 million budget, it made $32.6 million. So that's not great. But I'll have to see for myself how the movie is. I'd like to see it someday. Some movies that are coming up in the near future for Pierce Brosnan. There's a movie called How to Make Love Like an Englishman that he is going to be in. It's in post-production. It has Pierce Brosnan, Salma Hayek, and Jessica Alba as the main characters. And this is an interesting plot. It's an interesting plot, definitely. And I will read it to you. A drama about a Cambridge poetry professor, played by Pierce Brosnan, who finds a woman, played by Salma Hayek, who forces him to reevaluate his life of hedonistic excess, including a fling with his 21-year-old student. Keep in mind, Pierce Brosnan at this time is in his 60s. So, yeah. And there is Misty, who's played by an actress named Lindsay Sporer, after he gets her grad student stepsister, played by Jessica Alba, pregnant. So this is definitely a drama. This is something that a lot of soap operas would eat up. But it doesn't have a release date yet, but it looks interesting. In 2015, there's going to be... He's going to have a busy year in 2014. The first movie I'm going to talk about is The Coup. It has Owen Wilson and Pierce Brosnan in it, and Lake Bell. But it looks interesting because, for one thing, Owen Wilson in particular is in an action film. You don't see him in a whole lot of action films. But the premise is, in their new overseas home, an American family soon finds themselves caught in the middle of a coup, and they frantically look for a safe escape in an environment where foreigners are being immediately executed. Ooh. It looks interesting, and it is scheduled to be released March 6th of 2015. The next movie that I'm looking at is a movie called Survivor. It is going to have... It has an all-star cast. Mila Jovovich from the Resident Evil movies, Dylan McDermott, Pierce Brosnan, Emma Thompson, Angela Bassett, and James D'Arcy are all the actors that are going to be in the movie. It doesn't have a release date yet, but the plot of it is a State Department visa security officer, played by Mila Jovovich, newly posted to the U.S. Embassy in the United Kingdom, is on the run after she is framed for crimes she didn't commit. She was given responsibility for stopping terrorists from getting into the U.S. So it looks interesting. It looks like an interesting spy thriller film right there. Next movie I'm looking at is The Moon and the Sun. What is significant about this one is that Pierce Brosnan plays a French king, a famous French king, King Louis XIV, or he was nicknamed the Sun King, hence The Moon and the Sun. Pierce Brosnan, the main character. It is an action-adventure fantasy film, I see. And it's scheduled to be released April 10th of 2015, not long after The Coup. The plot. King Louis XIV's quest for immortality leads him to capture and steal a mermaid's life force, a move that is further complicated by his illegitimate daughter's discovery of the creature. So it looks like a pretty good historical / action film. And it's based on a book, The Moon and the Sun, called The Moon and the Sun. So that looks interesting. And then the other movie that he has coming out is a movie called Urge. He is the main guy in the movie. And the synopsis of the movie. A group of friends on holiday on an island experiment a new designer drug that makes them lose their ability to control their urges. Ooh. Sounds interesting. It is a thriller film. So, it definitely sounds interesting. There is no release date on it yet, but definitely looks interesting. And that's it for movies that are coming up for Pierce Brosnan. There is one other thing I want to touch on with television, and it is an appearance that Pierce Brosnan made on The Simpsons. It's a very memorable appearance to me. He played on the Treehouse of Horror 7? No. 12. My mistake. The 12th Treehouse of Horror. And he played what essentially was a spoof of James Bond. Of his James Bond character. He played a robot, basically. A robot. The Simpsons, basically, they buy a home security system. A home security system slash robot taking care of the Simpsons system. Basically. And the robot is called Ultra House 300. And they play the voice of Pierce Brosnan comes up in The Simpsons. They pick the voice of Pierce Brosnan because they can pick different voices. And, well, Pierce Brosnan's definitely a debonair type guy, the exact type of guy that he was in the Bond films, except he's a psychopath. He's a psychopath robot. So it makes for very funny entertainment, definitely. What I think is very neat is that he's played himself in a lot of video games. His own video games. GoldenEye in 1997, Tomorrow Never Dies in 99, World Is Not Enough in 2000. All Nintendo 64 games, and he played himself in those video games. And then in a few others as well. Including one that I owned on the PlayStation 2, I think it was. 007, Everything or Nothing. But yeah, that's it for my video on Pierce Brosnan. D-Rock 1992, out.